Good afternoon. Welcome back, and it's nice to be with you again this afternoon for Lectio. I grew up in the coal fields of southern West Virginia, and one of the things I remember are the roof beams for the mines. They were short, square, sturdy bars of wood, and they were stacked in rather ominous piles around the mine head because before the mechanization of mining, man dug the shafts out and propped them up, propped the roof bolts up with these roof beams. And it was really dangerous work, and the men who took those roof beams down and put up the plates and the beams and set them in place were really enormously brave and enormously strong. Now, you are at this point undoubtedly thinking, what has this got to do with the Transfiguration? Well, Mark's gospel, it seems to me, is held up on three roof beams, and each one is a theophany. Mark has set his gospel, if you will, on the roof beam of the baptism of Jesus in chapter 1, the Transfiguration story at the beginning of chapter 9, and the resurrection in chapter 16. And all of those are theophanies. In all three of them, the heavenly breaks into the earthly with a kind of divine show and tell, if you want to think of it in that way. This Lenten Sunday, we get the middle beam of Mark's gospel. It's the central point from which the reality of who Jesus is radiates out, back and forward in Mark's gospel, because it's the first glimpse that we have in that gospel of the glorified Christ. Because it illuminates all of the Christian life, it's one of the key spiritual texts for Orthodox Christianity. Paul in 2 Corinthians puts it this way: all of us with unveiled faces, seeing the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. I just think that's astonishing that as we look at the transfigured Jesus, we ourselves are being transformed into the one that we're looking at. St. John in 1 John has this same idea. He promises that now I'm quoting 1 John, when Jesus is revealed, we will be like him, for we will see him as he is. There's something really critical about seeing Jesus transfigured, because for us it is to begin ourselves to be transfigured, to be transformed into what he is, which may be dangerous even for the brave and the strong. Now, the Transfiguration, as you probably know, is a scholarly conundrum, but it reminds, I think, us who are not scholars that sometimes the meaning is in the details and not in the drama, in the daily and not in the drama. And we've all heard sermons on Jesus' transfiguration that discuss how it echoes the baptism of Jesus. Or we've heard that sermon on the Clorox Jesus with the clothes bleached brighter than any fuller could make them. Or we've heard the sermon that reminds us that Moses represents the law and Elijah the prophets, and the heavenly voice says, listen to Jesus. Or we've heard the sermon that talks about Peter's incomprehension. It's really hard not to love impetuous, not too bright, but eager and loving Peter. He's the kid in the classroom who always shoots his hand up first. And he doesn't know the answer, it doesn't matter, but he puts his hand up because he loves the teacher and he wants the attention of the teacher. We've heard that sermon about how we shouldn't try to make a dwelling place for the experience of the Transfiguration because spiritual experiences can't be clung to. And all of those are good readings of the text. But I wonder about the message in a detail. Did you notice the little opening phrase, 6 days later? Did you notice that? Until the very last week of the life of Jesus in Mark's gospel, he's very rarely so precise in his designation of time. What happened 6 days ago? Well, in Mark's gospel, 6 days ago, Jesus asks Peter who he is. And Peter says, "You're the Messiah." And true to form, he indicates he doesn't have a clue what that means. And so thereafter, Jesus delivers the first of three increasingly precise passion predictions and teachings about what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. Peter, James, and John, the inner circle of the 12, the special friends of Jesus, now, 6 days later, are here on the Mount of Transfiguration to help them understand more clearly who Jesus is. After 6 days, the crucial three receive confirmation and clarification of what it means that Jesus is Messiah. And it means that he is the light and the liberator and the one to be listened to. Orthodox icons of the Transfiguration are always images of light. I hope you can see this one maybe a little bit. There's Jesus in the light, and at the bottom of the mountain, the three disciples taking a little nap. But the eye is drawn to the top of the icon with Jesus bright, 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 and Moses and Elijah on either side of him. The dazzling light of Jesus is depicting the enlightenment that Jesus brings. In Christmastide, we heard St. John declare, "What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Light is the great biblical metaphor for understanding and the great symbol of Jesus and what Jesus teaches and understanding it in John's gospel. Jesus, Messiah, is light and is understanding. And on the Mount of the Transfiguration, his light is brighter in Mark than in any place else in this gospel except at the resurrection itself. Moses does indeed represent the law. And the law was given to Moses on the mountain, remember? Another great theophany of Scripture. But it was also given to Moses in the midst of the Exodus, the movement from slavery and bondage in Egypt to freedom. Moses was the agent of God's liberation from the Hebrews in Egyptian slavery. And God's Messiah, Jesus, is the ultimate agent of liberation for everybody. Jesus came to free us from anything and everything that enslaves us. And that fulfills the aim of the law and the prophets, which is to show us fullness of life in the reign of God. It was what the law was for. It was what the prophets imaged and spoke about. I came that you might have life and have it abundantly, says the Christ of the Transfiguration. And I will start by liberating you from anything you're enslaved to. The inner three, Peter, James, and John, are commanded to listen to Jesus. And that message of the heavenly voice must have been really shocking to Peter, James, and John, because standing there in front of them are the great heroes of their faith, Moses and Elijah. And the cloud, the voice from the cloud, which is clearly frightening enough to terrify big, hairy, strong fishermen, says, listen to the carpenter's kid from Nazareth. Listen to this guy who comes from nowhere and that you don't know very well yet. How shocking that must have been. They and we listen to Jesus precisely because he is the light and the liberator. Because he is the mediator of our liberation, of our freedom, of our transformation. He demonstrates what it means to take up our crosses and follow him. It's a wonderful Lenten text. It's not only an encouragement for us at the beginning of this season, but a reminder of what the primary activity for us is in Lent and always in our Christian life. It doesn't mean when we take up our cross that we passively put up with life's little annoyances, like my mother-in-law is my cross to bear, or my sister who chews weirdly in the refectory is my cross to bear. No, it means that you and I choose, for the sake of Jesus, what we could have avoided. We actively choose for his sake and for love what we could have avoided. And to choose knowing that may involve for us a lot of little deaths. Listening to Jesus, seeing him on the Mount transfigured, means not only being liberated ourselves, not only being transfigured ourselves, but it involves becoming the agent of liberation for others. If we are to become what Jesus is transfigured, then we are to become agents of liberation for others. And there, I think the cross becomes very, very personal indeed. The voice from the cloud is Lent's command to us. This is my Son, the beloved, the only one, the beloved. Listen to him. Whatever else Lent asks us to do, in the words of one of the hymns of my youth, it asks us to turn our eyes upon Jesus. I'm tempted to sing that for you. I just watched the Henry Louis Gates History of the Black Church on NPR, and how important the singing of the gospel is. But I won't sing for you. I'll simply tell you that the words of that hymn are so relevant to the Transfiguration. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face. Even if the brightness hurts our eyes. We are to listen to what he says, even if it calls us to difficult action. And the proof that we have heard is that we obey. The proof that we have listened to Jesus is that we do what he says. The proof of our love of Jesus, I'm afraid to tell you, is that rather dreadful O word, obedience. That the meaning of Mark's important roof beam, if you will, this second dramatic epiphany in the life of Jesus, might be in this little detail about 6 days ago. It's comfort and it's good news. In a very stark way, I think it was good news to a fisherman from Capernaum who listened to Jesus and messed up, really seriously messed up, and struggled to listen to more, to listen some more, and to work his way toward obedience. And surprise, he becomes one of the roof beams of Christ's church. And we hear him say in the second epistle of Peter, you will do well to be attentive to this as a light shining in a dark place until the day star rises, the dawn dawns, and the day star rises in your hearts. Be attentive to this transfigured Jesus as a light shining in the dark place until the day dawns and the morning star rises. Because Easter is coming and the day star will rise. And in the meantime, the heavenly voice says, listen to Jesus. I think if we listen and struggle to obey, the first beam we will have to remove is the beam in our own eye. And the beam that we shall have to carry is probably very like the one that Jesus carried to Golgotha.